Drop it on the random. Coming up on this week's episode of Hip Hop Now Podcast is Hip Hop Release Date Death Match. We didn't have to be that dramatic.
But let's get right to the business.
Read these headlines. This album must be gone. This album must be gone. Classic album. Classic album. Come to Hip Hop Podcast. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast Extra, a podcast designed to catch you up on all things hip-hop music and culture that happen throughout the week, throughout the year, or throughout hip-hop history, depending on what the topic is at hand. Please follow the movement via Vegas World INC, that be on Twitter and Instagram. Basically, that's the tag name. Returning listeners, what up? Appreciate your support. Appreciate you hitting that like button. Appreciate you sharing with people and bringing in new people like you new folk that just came through. It don't matter where you're from. And I want to give a big shout out to people listening in different areas, right? I don't do this that often. I used to do it a lot back in the day when this podcast first started, where I would look at, where are people listening the most, and I must just start shouting out those areas. Now, if I don't shout out your area, it doesn't mean that you're not important. Of course you're important, man. You're here to support the God on the show, So of course you're important. But I need you to come through, because these places that I'm going to name, and it's a little biased given my affiliation, are listening to this podcast in droves. So shout out to New York City, New Jersey. Those were obvious. Also, shout out to Baltimore. Was quite heavy in my statistics. Shout out to Germany. You didn't think I was going to say that. Shout out to a couple of places in Europe. And, there's a couple of spots on the West Coast and stuff like that. But the thing is you have to share this podcast with your network. Because typically, the way social media aggregates things, I'm kind of within this network of Baltimore, New York, and Jersey, because those are places I've lived. You know what I'm saying? So obviously I have a lot of friends and family in those different places, and my social media network seems to be dominated by those areas. But there are people who listen from other spots, from down south, from Canada, all of that. So definitely leave a comment in the comment section, who you are, where you're from, or just where you're from, where you representing, and let us know. Also, one other announcement before we get right into the business. Coming to this podcast is something that was long overdue, and I feel like it's time to start doing this. And that is, no, it's not advertising. I'm not there yet with that. I don't think so. But I'm going to have some t-shirts this summer for Hip Hop Now Podcast. So if you enjoy this podcast, you listen every week, and you want to support a brother by, rocking that t-shirt during the summer, wherever you go, Instagram it up or whatever, there'll be more information about that coming pretty soon. So just follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Vegas World INC, and stay locked in. Now, let's get right into the business at hand. Big shout out to hotnewhiphop.com. They put out an article that basically is the basis for this episode. And I just want to say this, right? A couple of months ago in 2018, I did a show on the release date, 1993 release date of Wu-Tang Clan's debut album and the Tribe Called Quest's third album, Midnight Marauders. So Into the 36 Chambers, Midnight Marauders were released on the same day, right? And I felt like it warranted a podcast all to itself. Well, Hot New Hip Hop, around that same time when the reminiscent part happened on November 23rd of 2018, which is also the anniversary day of those two albums releasing, they did an article on stacked release dates for hip hop. And I thought that was dope. So I saved the article. I read it like a couple of months back, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a show surrounded by that. But how do we do it properly? Well, what we're going to do, and you can participate by, talking amongst yourselves, leaving your comments in the comment section, giving me your list based off the dates. But not only are we going to look at what was released on these specific album release dates, but we're going to say, and we're going to set the rule, you only have enough money to buy one. Now, let's just get right into the business. Remember, that's the rule, though. You only have money to buy one. Which one are you going to buy? So the first one they have up here, and remember, this is on hotnewhiphop.com, so go there, show them some love. Look for the article because they have a write-up. I'm not going to read their write-up. You're supposed to go read it. But the first date we have is June 28th, 1988. Public Enemy dropped their sophomore album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. And Big Daddy Kane dropped his debut album, Long Live the Kane. You only have money for one. Which one are you getting? Me, and I'm going to tell you, let me just put the disclaimer in there. I got to put the disclaimer in there. I had to take a breath real quick. There's probably not going to be a release date here where I don't regret my choice, even though I'm going to be picking something I believe is dope. But nevertheless, if I only had money for one, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, or Big Daddy Kane's Long Live the Kane, I'm probably going to buy Big Daddy Kane, Long Live the Kane. Now, let me explain. Right? Taking nothing away from Public Enemy's It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. It is a bona fide classic to this day. But me, personally, I looked up to Big Daddy Kane, and I anticipated that Ain't No Half Stepping video. I didn't care if it was halfway on, it was getting ready to come on. It was announced that the video was getting ready to come on. I had to watch it every time. There were times where I would watch video shows waiting for it to come on again and would be upset because the video didn't air. So when this Big Daddy Kane album dropped, I mean, he already had Raw and Ain't No Half Step. He already had a bunch Just Rhyming with Biz. Not Just Rhyming with Biz. What's the other one? Me and Biz or whatever. No, maybe it is Just Rhyming with Biz. I don't remember because I'll mix the Master Ace joint up sometimes. But nevertheless, man, Kane was from Brooklyn, and he was nice, and he could dance, and his videos were dope, and I wanted to be him. I was inspired by Public Enemy. I thought their music was dope, but I wanted to be Big Daddy Kane. So if you telling me I only have money for one, I really want that Public Enemy, but I'm going with the Big Daddy Kane album. Now, the next date on the West Coast tip, September 13th, 1988. 1988 was a good year. We try to tell y'all that. You have a choice of buying Eazy-E's Easy Does It or Ice-T's Power. This is easy for me because I'm going to go with Ice-T. Why? Because I'm not afraid to say it. God rest the dead, Eazy-E and all of that, but I did not like Eazy-E. I just didn't. Not over his whole career. I didn't like him in the beginning. And then when NWA dropped, I gravitated towards like MC Ren and Ice Cube because I was like, yo, they could rap. Eazy never could rap for me. It wasn't until later I learned why he couldn't really rap. Because for one, somebody else was rating it, and two, he was a gangster. He wasn't no rapper. So that knowing that afterwards gave me a different outlook on Eazy's music, and I kind of enjoy it a little bit more now. You know what I'm saying? To know that this dude is a real gangster. But nevertheless, I'm going with the Ice-T record. I know Boys in the Hood is on here, and I'm your pusher with Eazy-E, but again, I'm just wasn't an Eazy-E fan at the time, so it wouldn't have been a difficult decision for me. Now, this one is a tough one for me. November 24th, 1992, The Pharcyde's Bizarre Ride 2, The Pharcyde, versus Kool G Rap and DJ Polo's Live and Let Die. Two very dope albums, but again, this one becomes easy for me because Kool G Rap and DJ Polo's Live and Let Die is my favorite album from Kool G Rap. Hands down. Like, hands down, is literally my favorite album from Kool G Rap. So there will be no way on, November 24th, 1992, I go in a record store with money to buy one and I'm not getting that Kool G Rap album. Nah, I'm going with that. And I think the thing also that some people, for context with all these picks, because obviously these are my picks and you have your picks, it's all about how the music speaks to you. So that's my whole reason for giving examples of why I would choose one over the other. It's not just a simple answer of hot versus whack, you know what I'm saying, or trash versus dope or whatever. It's all about how it speaks to you. What's your type of music? Somebody may listen to Kool G Rap and DJ Polo and feel like, yo, this is too vulgar and violent. And they hear something like The Pharcyde and they like, this is what hip hop should be. Some people feel that way. Some people feel like hip hop shouldn't even be gangster rap or hardcore rap. It should be more like Pharcyde and the Tribe Called Quest and stuff like that. So some people wouldn't choose that. But me, my money, in 1992, I'm getting this. Now, we get to the albums I mentioned earlier. November 9th, 1993, Wu-Tang Clan's debut album, 36 Chambers, versus A Tribe Called Quest, Midnight Marauders, which was their third album. Now, in real life, I bought both of those albums on the same day. But there was a feeling I had at that point in time, having listened to both of them, that makes my choice here much easier because it's how I felt when I owned both new albums. I'm going with Wu-Tang. Why? Not because Midnight Marauders is whack and not because, Low End Theory is my favorite Tribe album. It's not even none of that. It was just that Wu-Tang was so much something different at the time. It was just more exciting for me. It was the same thing when I bought both. I listened to Tribe first because, they're coming off a Low End Theory. So I put Tribe in first and was rocking out. But man, when I put that Wu-Tang 36 Chambers in, I was like, man, this is different. Tribe were better, but they were from an age that we were more familiar with, Native Tongues and the early 90s sound or whatever. And Wu-Tang was something new, man. Like the dirty, grimy beats and 100 dudes in the group. And, the RZA, this producer just out of nowhere making, the album in the house and it sounds like it basically. That Cream beat. Man, the first time hearing that, first time hearing Can It Be, it's just too much, man. That's begging for my money. You know what I'm saying? And this is the thing too with all of these situations, since in most cases I somewhat faced, which one I'm gonna get in some of these cases, but it becomes easier when something touches you like that because of the simple fact that A Tribe Called Quest had already had 2 albums. And I loved the Award Tour. I didn't know what this album was going to be, but it looked like it was going to be huge. Talking about Midnight Marauders. But man, like Wu-Tang was infectious. Once they caught on, man, they caught on big time. And I got stories for days about when that album came out, but that'll be in my book. So I'll save that for later. But yeah, November 9th, 1993, Wu-Tang Clan versus A Tribe Called Quest. I'm copping it. Which one are you getting out of the joints I named? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Real quick though, if you don't know, I have a video channel on YouTube called the B-Roll Network. And on that channel, we do a podcast, a video podcast called That Time in Hip Hop. It's hosted by myself and Tony Haynes of IntoTheDome.com. And what we do there is we talk about the history and nostalgia and more importantly, the preservation of hip hop music and culture, meaning we just talk about events and albums and artists. And recently we did a subject on hook singers, the art of singing hooks in hip hop, because as early as the late 80s, you had rappers who didn't want you to confuse hip hop with R&B at all, especially in the early 90s. But yet we had singers who were completely allowed to sing on some of the roughest, most hip-hopitest, I just made that up, hip-hopitest tracks ever. And we salute them and we talk about them and we talk about some more recent people, and it's pretty dope. So check that out on YouTube. It's called That Time in Hip Hop. And if you are listening to this podcast, trust me, the link is in the description, so you don't even have to listen to that part. Now let's get back into the business at hand with a recap real quick, right? So if you kind of, zoned out a little bit, Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back versus Long Live the Kane. I choose to buy Long Live the Kane. Easy Does It versus Power. Eazy-E versus Ice-T. I choose to buy Ice-T's Power. Farside, Bizarre Ride 2. The Farside versus Kool G Rap and DJ Polo's Live and Let Die album. I choose to buy Kool G Rap and DJ Polo. And Wu-Tang Clan's debut album 36 Chambers versus A Tribe Called Quest's third album Midnight Marauders. I choose to buy the Clan, the Wu-Tang Clan. Now let's move on. February 13th, 1996. Tupac versus the Fugees. Tupac drops All Eyes on Me, fresh out of prison, now signed to Death Row Records, coming at his enemies. Probably gonna say Hennessy after that, or something, or Little Natasha, one of them joints that he always say. But first album on Death Row, it's a double album, goes up against the Fugees' sophomore album and a monster of an album in The Score. I only have money to buy one. Which one am I buying? I'm buying the Fugees because it's cheaper. Because remember, if this is back in the days, the double CD was double the money. But I have to say I'm going with the Fugees anyway. And look, I didn't really care for the Fugees that much until The Score. And I didn't really care for Tupac as much. Like, I liked songs, don't get me wrong. And I like Me Against the World, but I wasn't like this huge fan that would just buy his music when it would come out. I gotta say I'm going with The Score because I was just more in that lane. Like those songs that the Fugees put out, like Fuji La and Killing Them Softly, they just got me more. And then Tupac was out of prison. He was acting like Bishop and he was dissing everybody. And he was dissing New York, even though he was born and raised in New York. His name was not raised, but, partly raised in New York. And his name was MC New York. Like, his New York affiliation is deep. Like, he's not from the West Coast like that. It just really was turning me off. But that All Eyes on Me album is pretty dope. But I probably would have spent my money on The Score. Some upsets going on here. September 29th, 1998. Now, this one is stacked. Jay-Z drops Volume 2, Hard Knock Life. Outkast drops Aquemini. Mos Def and Talib Kweli drop Black Star album. Brand Nubian reunites. That means Grand Puba and Sadat X and Lord Jamar all together for the Foundation album. And A Tribe Called Quest drops The Love Movement, which was more of a return to having an album that featured a lot of Phife and a lot of Q-Tip, because Beats, Rhymes, and Life before that was all disjointed. Consequence was on records and all that. This one is difficult, and if I had to do it today, it would probably be different. But I did buy an album on that release date, and I was only able to buy one because I only had money for one, and I really only wanted one at the time, and that's Jay-Z's Volume 2 Hard Knock Life. I was a huge I still am a big Jay-Z fan, and Jay-Z just had verses on mixtapes that was crazy. He just was killing on so many levels, and he was dropping albums back to back to back. So I was on that ride of Jay-Z albums that was just coming out like every year. So this was, tremendously anticipated, especially given the features on the album. I didn't know it was going to be that many features, but this is what I was looking forward to. When it comes to Outkast's Aquemini, that was the other album I was curious about because I wasn't the biggest Outkast fan. I never bought an album at that point, but I definitely loved a ton of records from the first album and AT Aliens album. And the word on the street was Aquemini was crazy. But I had already spent my money on Jay-Z's Hard Knock Life, and I liked it. But, there was that part of me who was like, damn, should I have gotten Aquemini? Because it seems like that's more potent. Because this is the thing, right? Jay-Z's Hard Knock Life was Jay-Z fully stepping into his own as far as being a dude that makes party records and can make a couple of hip-hop records, right? It was a lot of features on this album, and it was a lot there that seemed like it was more designed to have radio spins, to be honest. Whereas Aquemini was more of an album, more of an experience. And typically I gravitate to those albums that are more of experience, and those albums that's just there to chart and to be my soundtrack to the parties. Sometimes I'd rather just have the bootleg, you know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, I went with the Hard Knock Life. Black Star, I had heard their music, but I wasn't excited because, they were new. I knew Mos Def, but I didn't know Talib, so I wasn't excited. I wasn't excited for Brand Nubian reuniting because I felt like it was so many years later, Brand Nubian as a group with Grand Puba had basically been wiped from my memory. So I didn't anticipate it, and until this day, I don't even think I've heard it. Probably heard records off of it, but I don't think I've listened to it, so maybe that's something I should do. And A Tropical Quest, The Love Movement, that album is complete trash to me. So that was an album that I was like, man, I got to get tried, but it was a little suspect because it was called The Love Movement. And again, hip hop had changed drastically since they had done something. But the song Find My Way was like, man, but if that ain't a Tribe record, I don't know what is. Shout out to Jay Dilla. But nevertheless, I went with Hard Knock Life, and that was the end of the story. Now we're going to move up to September 11th, 2007. Kanye West's Graduation, which was his third album, versus 50 Cent's Curtis, which I believe was his third album. I remember when these were releasing on the same day, and hip-hop was kind of split in two. Both were on fire. Both were totally different types of albums, and you only have $10 to buy one. I went with Kanye because Kanye's debut album was dope, even though I didn't feel some of the college slander, especially for black colleges. Late Registration was dope, so I had no reason to believe that Graduation wasn't going to be dope. I was looking forward to it. Get Rich or Die Trying was dope. It's a classic in my opinion, but The Massacre was terrible to me. There was some dope records on it, don't get it twisted, but I think I made only about 4 records on that entire album, and I've never listened to it again. I can't even remember if I own it. I probably do. I just never think to click on it. So I wasn't excited for Curtis. So I would have bought Graduation, and Graduation is my favorite Kanye West album. I don't think it's his best, but it is my favorite. So I definitely would have spent my money on that. But the Curtis album was actually better than I anticipated, because I got that later and was like, oh, this is like more like Get Rich or Die Trying, you know. But nevertheless, I'm going with the Kanye Graduation. Just, that's where my money's going. June 18th, 2013, Kanye West drops Yeezus. Mac Miller drops Watching Movies with the Sound Off, or like I called it back then, listening to your album with the sound off. Sorry, Mac Miller. Back then, I was just harsh, man. I'm sorry, man. Rest in peace. And J. Cole's sophomore album, Born Sinner. If I have money for one, I'm going with J. Cole's Born Sinner. I thought the Yeezus album was trash. I thought the beats were dope, but I thought the rhymes were just worse. I didn't know what happened. Something happened. Something went wrong with the ghostwriting. So I wasn't feeling that album, and still not until this day. And I wasn't a big Mac Miller fan, so I was definitely not going to spend my money on that. With J. Cole, I was disappointed by his debut album, but I knew how dope he was, and Born Sinner did not disappoint. So that's definitely where I would have been putting my money. December 9th, 2016, and this is the last one we're going to do. You had Ab-Soul of TDE, Do What Thou Wilt, J. Cole's For Your Eyes Only, Post Malone's Stoney, and Tech Nine's The Storm. I'm going to tell you right now, never really been a fan of Tech Nine, so wasn't even going to think twice about spending my money on that. Not a fan of Post Malone, so was definitely not spending my money on Stoney. I'm going with Ab-Soul, Do What Thou Wilt. I have that album. That album is fire and terrible, like criminally slept on. Raw backwards on you rappers. Come on, man. People who have that album know that album is fire, man. That opening track, this joint is dope. It's very underappreciated. Like it's really upsets me sometimes. Like, damn, people don't like this joint. This dude is spitting. Now, why would I choose that over the J. Cole For Your Eyes Only? Well, that album was the album where J. Cole sound very depressed, but I thought that was probably the concept, so I let it slide. But then he was like harmonizing on every record, like really trying to sing on every record. Everything was starting with a "Do you wanna do it?" Like, yo, it's with. Come on, man. I know you do that sometimes, but chill. Like, chill with the Gloria Estefan singing. Why are you doing that? That's how I felt. I don't feel like the album is the worst thing in the world, but a lot of people felt that album was terrible, probably because it was following 2014 Forest Hills Drive. But I felt like even if you take it and isolate it from that album and any other J. Cole album that's deemed good, it just wasn't good. It was boring, and it was like, I didn't understand what the goal was. But this Ab-Soul album, Do What Thou Wilt, I would gladly use my only $10 or whatever it costs to buy an album to buy that one, because that one is well worth it, in my opinion, and incredibly slept on. So there you have it. There's the list of albums and release dates. Again, check out the article on hotnewhiphop.com. They have some write-ups, a little bit of information about it, so it's worth your time. But what were the albums that, if you only had money for one, that you would have chose, and why? I mean, you can pick one of those dates. You can do all of them. Just leave your comments in the comment section below. That's going to do it for me for this week. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter by just looking up the cat by the name of Vegas World INC. Also, if Facebook is what you do, and I'm not judging you, bars, you can go to Hip Hop Right Now, facebook.com/hip hop right now. And not only is this podcast available there, but there's also stories like this, and articles and videos like that new Schoolboy Q video that's up there, and it does some Puffy and Belly movie stuff on there. Pretty dope. Also know that this podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. So if you listen on iTunes, I got you. But it's also on Spotify and iHeartRadio and everywhere else. And of course, the hub, the one place where it all comes from, SoundCloud.com/HipHopNowPodcast. Until next time, y'all, I am not a critic, I'm a fan. Peace. Drop it on the random.